that story for our people so that they might understand it. They're like, I've never heard this Western culture story. What are you talking about here? What do you mean by, excuse me, the Western cultural story?
How long do you want here?
I want, just give it. Give it.
Well, this is, I'm not sure where to start, because if I start back in the pre-Socratics, we're going to be here for a while. If I start at the Enlightenment that has begun to deeply affect American culture, that's a good place to start, because that's the place of a real conversion in many ways in Western culture. But the trouble is, to understand that conversion, you got to know what's gone before and what led into it. So this is, let me see if I can do it this way. Michael Polanyi has used an image, and he says that the explosion of Western culture is lighting the flame of Western pagan Greek humanism in the oxygen of the gospel. So you light this pagan humanism that came from the early Greeks in the oxygen of the gospel. Now, he's talking about a late explosion, but the reality is that it's been the gospel and it's been the pagan humanism of people like Plato and Aristotle that have formed a syncretistic alliance and shaped European culture. Now, I would love to talk about that, but I'm going to let that go. But as we move into the modern era, what begins to happen with the Renaissance and on into the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, is that humanism begins to separate itself, as it were, from the Christian faith, no longer forming this nice partnership. The way you might say it to children is, there was a marriage of people that were incompatible through the Middle Ages. But now all of a sudden at the Renaissance, they start realizing they're incompatible and they start to push away. And so what we're talking about is secularism here. As the humanist worldview starts to push itself away more and more from the gospel, it continues to be deeply shaped by the gospel, but now humanism is beginning to exert its freedom. And that paganism is going to become a neo-paganism by the time we reach the late 20th century. And so what happened between the Renaissance, where the Christian faith was still very strong, and with humanism, and the Enlightenment, when finally there is this conversion to humanism? What happened in between? Well, there's two main theses that historians talk about. First was in the scientific revolution that they were given a choice, and you're given a choice between the Christian faith and science. Either the Christian faith was true and the earth was at the center of the universe and so forth, or science was true. And more people rejected the Christian faith, saying, we can see what we can see. And so that led to the diminishment of the Christian faith. But the second thing that was probably even more problematic was, after the Reformation, there were all these religious wars. Calvinists were killing Lutherans. Lutherans were killing Catholics. Catholics were killing the Lutherans. Everybody was killing each other. And the thing is that everybody was killing the poor Anabaptists. And so what you've got is Europe being soaked with the blood of Christians. And you see people like Voltaire and people like Descartes saying, oh, if this is the Christian faith that holds culture together, we want to reject it, because this is what it leads to. And so there's this growing rejection of the Christian faith because of what it leads to this kind of hostility. And so in the next century of the Enlightenment, there is the conversion of Western culture to a humanist vision. That humanist vision holds on to a lot of Christian stuff, but now reshapes it. And that Enlightenment vision is, we will build the new creation, but we're going to build it. God will not build it. And the way we are going to build it is by science coming to understand our world. And as we understand that world, we apply it to the world, first of all, through technology that enables us to control the non-human creation. And then we're able to control it by applying it to the social area, by forming economic and political and judicial and media systems shaped by science. And when we get good economic system, let's say capitalism, and a good political system, let's say democracy, that's deeply shaped by science, and we are rigorous in making sure that scientific science undergirds those institutions, will shape a society where we can build this better world. And so, in many ways, the modern worldview that's controlled the United States and North America for 200 years is a vision of science and technology building a better world and progressing to this better world. What are you seeing in the late 20th century, beginning in the, well, I like to say beginning in the 1960s, is you get a hippie generation. That was my generation. I used to actually have hair down to here. You'd never believe it. But in that hippie generation, you had a whole generation of people growing up saying, this worldview is not working. Look what it's leading to. And you see this enormous revolution in the 60s that is saying, this is not working. And this is the origins and the beginning of postmodernity that is saying that story didn't work. It's led to more oppression, more injustice, more destruction of our world. And he says that is not working. And in many ways, what you see in the United States back in this time is really polarization. Let's hold on to our humanist past. But of course, that's considered to be Christian. Let's hold on to our humanist past. And you see people saying, no, these godless liberals are saying that it's not working. You know, that story, that history is not working. It's destroying our culture. And that's evolved, and we could talk about its evolution in the late 20th, early 21st century. But now you're at a situation where in many ways you've got a culture that's at culture wars precisely because that vision of life did not work. That vision of life that was embodied in the founding fathers of the United States, that Enlightenment vision that's embodied in the founding fathers of the United States, it did not work. It wasn't a Christian vision, it was an Enlightenment vision, and it did not work. And the fragmentation is, what do we do? How in the world, what do we do now in a culture where we see its failure? Well, that's probably way too general, probably raises all kinds of red flags. But I think that that has to be worked out concretely and showing that this is, we're in the midst, the way I like to put it, we're in the midst in our culture at this moment of the failure of idols. That idols, as my friend Chris Wright says, idols never fail to fail. Idols never fail to fail. And the good gift of science, the good gift of technology, the good gift of economic freedom, the good gift of democratic visions of politics, the good understandings of justice that came from all that is failing to deliver the new creation that we want to see. And so those gifts have become idols. And what idols do is they say, give your heart to me. And when you give me your heart, I will give you something in return. Because they're powers of creation, technology, science, they'll give you stuff. But soon as I give you some of these gifts from creation, I'll soon take over your heart and I will dominate you and I'll dehumanize you. That's the way idolatry works. And I think we're seeing so much of that in our culture today.